Thank you. How's it going, guys? Thank you for having me, first of all. So yeah, good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending where you're dialing in from. Today, I would like to talk about scaling commercially viable solutions in the DeFi space. May I have next slide, please? Thank you. So as we can see, some really basic statistics that can easily be found by everybody. We can appreciate that the growth of the last few months or year, I would say, of DeFi in the space has been absolutely phenomenal. So this screenshot was taken barely 2 days ago on Wednesday. So we can see that right now there is over $11 billion. And funny enough, about 25% of that market is being taken by a single product, which is Uniswap. Next slide, please. So one of the side effects of the so-called DeFi craze has been that a new incumbent like Uniswap has suddenly taken Coinbase in terms of total value being traded in a single day, which again, a couple of years ago in 2017, 18, especially 18, when everybody was talking about DEXs, that would have been completely unimaginable. Next slide, please. So these are some quick example of the different solutions that are being today put together by the DeFi people. The truth is that, I mean, even for me, who has been in the software world for a long time, seeing this amount of innovation is really breathtaking. I mean, every couple of weeks, a brand new product with one new cool idea is hitting the market. And it's quite impressive. But in reality, we will see soon that this is not sustainable the way it is. Next slide, please. So what we have here is yet another easy to find screenshot from the internet. You can see that one of the major side effects of the DeFi craze has been a well-known issue with regards to gas prices. I personally know people that has paid as much as $600 on an absolutely crazy day just to be able to get in front of everybody else. So as you can imagine, you cannot build an industry around a system that doesn't have predictable fees, especially during a bull market, as we seem to be into. Next slide, please. Now, one very interesting comment to say, though, is that we seem to believe that because the $11 billion locked into DeFi and those amazing statistics, we seem to believe that there must be millions of people using DeFi on a daily basis. But reality says otherwise. So again, this is public data, easily accessible by anybody, whereby we can see that Uniswap, the last 30 days, had 87,000 transactions. Now, by transactions, these statistics mean wallets, different wallets. So even if we would assume that each wallet would correspond to a single individual, we would be talking about an absolutely minuscule number of users. Reality is that every individual is using approximately 3 or 4 different wallets. So as you can imagine, we have suddenly 24.67% of those 11.4 billion locked, managed by a single product. And sadly, that single product has got a maximum of about 20 or 30,000 users per month. So that is just not really going to cut it. Moving on. Next slide, please. Now, this is another set of statistics that maybe the people in the crypto space might not pay that much attention to because of the background we have and where we come from. Definitely, this is worth looking at. So for you guys to understand, the average time on site for any website is slightly below a minute. So the 5 minutes 49 seconds, what tells us is that definitely the products in this particular case, Uniswap, has got a high degree of stickiness. And of course, it's not the same reading the news than doing trading or swapping tokens. So each session is definitely keeping people engaged on the site for a long time. So, they might be performing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 transactions, each one of them. Next slide, please. So as a summary of what I've been talking the last 5-7 minutes, is that there is a phenomenal amount of money locked into DeFi, and the appetite is there. Uniswap is controlling almost a quarter of the entire market, but yet the number of users that it is contributing to that growth is minuscule. Although those users spend a hell of a lot of time on those websites, on that website particularly, all those things combined has got a pretty nasty effect on the Ethereum blockchain. And as I mentioned before, the prices it's absolutely not sustainable. So whoever believes that DeFi the way it is going to cut it moving on, I personally believe that that is not going to be the case. Next slide, please. So because of all these questions, the last few months, some people on the crypto space has started to question if DeFi the way it is really ready for mainstream adoption. Next slide. But reality is that no, it is not going to work this way. So next slide, please. So what I would like to talk to you. Oh yeah, sorry, yet another statistic. So Ethereum is most definitely king on the DeFi space, and yes, a lot of people has started talking about moving to either Solana or other blockchains just mainly because of the gas prices. But reality, and this is where most people tends to get it wrong, is that Ethereum has been around for a few years now, and definitely has got the biggest developer base, has got also probably the most mature tools, although in the grand scheme of things, I wouldn't call them particularly very mature. So not because these and that developer or those users might get angry to the fact that the fees are so expensive, it means that everybody's going to be able to jump on yet another blockchain. So that is one important topic to remember. That is that software matures at a very specific rate, and there are specific parameters that ought to happen for software to mature. And that happens exactly to the blockchains or the platforms that third parties can provide to develop DeFi solutions on EOS, Bitcoin, or Solana, whatnot. And that process consists on building something that is real, obtaining decent feedback, and improving and iterating. So I heavily believe that it's going to be difficult to start replicating the momentum Ethereum has gained in DeFi onto another blockchain anytime soon. Next slide, please. So the problems with Ethereum are well documented by everybody. But from my humble opinion, I believe that most of the discussion seems to be focalized into one thing and one thing only, which is the TPS. And that is, again, one of the biggest fallacies that I have encountered in this space. Of course, TPS is definitely paramount, but yeah, there are many other parameters that ought to be fixed. Like, for example, the finality of the transactions, which hopefully we'll talk in more detail on the panel. Also, the latency. Real-time systems cannot have the same latency as Ethereum provides today, and nonetheless, as well, the fees. So, and of course, I don't mean to break the news here for anybody, but Ethereum 2.0 is not going to fix this anytime soon. So next slide, please. So this is exactly what we built NAMI a few years back. So our background is in content aggregation and distribution. At some point, we were serving 50 million users a day. They were not particularly our own users. They were users of our customers. We're serving customers, users from Telenor, Alcatel, Mozilla, Panasonic, and a few other ones. And we realized that there were a lot of people talking about fixing scalability issues, but in reality, we didn't really meet any that was building anything and developing. So in January 2018, we pivoted once again, and we started building NAMI. And we based NAMI on the hypothesis of the previous slide. So not only TPS, but also fix the finality, latency, and the predictability of the fees. Next slide, please. So, well, I've just covered two slides into one. Sorry about that. So yeah, thank you. So NAMI is a layer 2 solution, and as indicated before, it is built from the ground up to take a very different approach towards scalability. Not different because it's different to what most people seem to be working on in this industry. Let me be clear about that. From our point of view, scalability is not a single point. It's a holistic approach, and scalability also might very well mean, for example, being able to easily adopt the solution. Therefore, you need proper SDK, command line interface, and other solutions that any developer doesn't need a PhD on blockchain to be able to use and build on top of it. Now, those hypotheses, of course, like happens with any startup, those hypotheses are all fine. But eventually, what you need is somebody to admit that what you have done is the right thing. So since we hit mainnet in November 2018, actually a bit after that, since early 2019, we have been literally selling left and right. We have been reaching out to our network, speaking with companies we had worked with in the past, and of course the usual crypto suspects that we have worked with as well. And the good news is that our pitch has resonated very well, especially on the commercial side of things. So right now we have a solution that is meant to be deployed by the end of this month, maybe a couple of days late. I'm not giving much details because, again, this is not yet public information, but I'm more than happy to share these high-level details with you. So we deployed an MVP 3 weeks ago, has been successfully running since then. And also, especially on the financial side of things, banks and financial entities, they are very clear. Those who actually understand what they're meant to build to fix existing problems of their industry, those guys understand very well that transactions ought to be instant and final as they happen. So this thing about waiting 5, 10, 15 minutes is just not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. And again, it blows my mind a little bit that most of these other protocols, they don't think about it. Next slide, please. So back to the original title of the presentation, what does DeFi need to become mainstream? And of course, in many aspects, this might be an opinion because DeFi has not yet been fixed. But I would like to bring some factual data points to be able to defend that. So from my humble opinion, what it needs is a system that provides you with no latency, that the users know exactly how much they're going to pay for every transaction before the transaction happens. Also, if by mainstream, we're talking about not 38,000 wallets, but 100,000 wallets. If instead of talking about that, we're talking about any solution that anybody can use, and therefore large companies would like to build solutions on DeFi, then your protocol has to provide the tools to those third parties to be able to build compliance rules. Otherwise they will not do it. The finality of the transactions also ought to be instant, and ideally wished by, especially again, the financial institutions that we're talking to, is interoperability. So as a heads up to those watching the presentation, I'll say that many financial institutions sees the next generation of blockchain solutions as the very first ERP solutions built 20 years ago. An absolute mess by which they will pour a lot of money. It will work, but then eventually they will need to pour a lot more money to be able to talk to the company next to them because they will be working on a different platform. And in terms of scalability, horizontal scaling, that is something that we believe as well should be supported for DeFi to be mainstream. And a wish list as well, I would say, is generalized smart contracts. So with all these 7 bullet points together, then we believe that the DeFi will definitely become mainstream. Next slide, please. Well, that was it. So I would like to thank you all. I hope this was useful somehow, and I hope that you will join us as well on the next panel.